What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Struggle to Strength podcast, your source for real life application on how to turn your struggles into strengths in all things mind, muscle, and money.
All right, let's kick it off. Josh, what is velocity-based training?
That's a good question. We have somebody to talk to you about that today.
Perfect.
Yeah, isn't that so convenient? And basically, it helps people be better at things. And if we want to be better at things, we need information to identify how we can improve. So in any application, identifying areas for improvement is critical to your success. The more variables we can improve upon, the better we become. And especially when it comes to health and fitness and the competitive environment, having the tools to identify those variables can be the difference between winning and losing. And we hate losing. So do you want more tools to improve your performance? Do you want to be better? Do you want to be stronger? Do you want to be faster? Do you want to be harder to kill? Yes.
Yes.
Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Jacob Tober, head of research and education at Metric, which is a revolutionary velocity-based training app that enables lifters and coaches to accurately track velocity, range of motion, power, and fatigue with just your smartphone. Like, you don't need any additional hardware. You don't need to attach a little string to your barbell or whatever it is you're using. So in this episode, we get to nerd out and dive super deep into the specifics of training, variables of progress, and we learn a lot about velocity-based training to improve strength, speed, and overall performance. If you're a fitness or technology junkie who's interested in improving performance and results, grab a notebook and a pen. Stay tuned, because this is for you. We will see y'all inside. Enjoy the episode. We'll talk soon. This is something that I've been talking about lately, is metrics outside of load and rep count. And so I'm really excited to dive in and learn more about what specifically you guys do. Cause rep speed is another variable, but there's so many variables that people don't track that make them feel as if they're not progressing just because they're not putting more weight on the bar, more reps in the tank. And I'm like, man, there's so much more that goes into what equals progress in your training. So I'm excited to chat, man. This is going to be a really cool conversation.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. So to get started, I think, the best thing we can do is kind of learn a little bit more about you and kind of have you introduce yourself and explain where you came from and how you got to where you are now. I'm really interested in, the progress and the progression from like weights and reps and traditional forms of progressive overload to your focus here on velocity-based training.
Yeah. So reps and load haven't gone away. I still think they're really important. So sometimes people think, velocity-based training, well, all I'll care about is velocity. If it's not bar speed, I don't care. And that's too reductionist. It's too simplistic. And it's like, you should just add velocity in with things like RPE, load, rep counts, all that kind of stuff goes along with velocity. And so velocity is a really nice complementary metric. And the really cool thing about velocity is it allows you to measure the quality of your training. So load, reps, these measure the volume, how much work we're doing, how much weight's on the bar. But velocity, particularly when you compare today's velocity with, say, your all-time velocity PR, for example, 150 kilo deadlift, what's the fastest you've ever moved that barbell? And what are you moving it today relative? And that goes, well, normally I move that at 0.5. Today it's 0.45. Ooh, I'm not feeling it. I'm a bit sluggish. I'm a bit in the hole. Or alternatively, it's 0.55 meters per second. So I'm flying, the bar's popping. Let's go. Today's a PR day. Let's get after the weights. Let's attack this session. So you can use it to kind of tell where you're at relative to yourself in the past. And I think often people use velocity in fixed terms, like, have to lift at exactly this velocity. But I think more important and a better use is just like with load, no one goes from, their first day squatting to a world championship in powerlifting. They go, kilo by kilo, plate by plate. It's the same with velocity. Just move it a little bit faster than you did last time, lift a little more weight, try and move that as fast as the old weight, and you progress like that. So it's just another way of tracking that progress in your training.
Load is gonna mean, in very simplistic terms, weight. What is velocity?
Yeah, so the most common metric is mean velocity, which is the average velocity of the concentric part of a lift. So you do a deadlift, you lift the bar from the ground to your hips, the average speed that bar moved at during that time. Okay. And so technology will take samples all the way along the way. It's like, all right, you're at 0, now you're at 3 inches off the ground, 6 inches, 9 inches, 12 inches. And I'll take those samples and it'll average out the velocity and give you mean velocity in meters per second. So I'm Australian. We work in metric. It's quite nice for me. It's a little unusual for Americans sometimes to work back into metric, but meters per second velocity. So a really fast squat, for example, might be 1 meter per second average velocity from the bottom to the top.
That's fast.
Deadlift might be more like 0.8. But for a heavy set, things as slow as 0.1 meter per second average velocity for the entire range of motion is a pretty common metric, pretty common value.
Okay.
So I've always been really curious about the technology that you guys use to track this. I've seen the pieces of equipment that you can put on, like stick to the floor and attach to the barbell. Is that how you track that? And if so, which brand, which model do you use?
Yeah, so pretty biased on this one. So that the device you're talking about there is a linear positional transducer, and effectively a string with a chip and a battery in a little box. And as the string pulls out, it measures how much it rotates what's called a rotary encoder inside the device. And so more string gets pulled out faster, it gives you a faster velocity. What I'm currently working on now is we're actually building a technology called Metric VBT, which is a computer vision based solution. So it uses the app and the camera on your phone. You point it side on to your lift, and it tracks the plates just with the camera. And so it gives you a precise measurement with no extra hardware, no strings, no bits on your arms, nothing like that.
Dude, that's really cool.
We think that's going to be the future, where it's just you download an app, you point it, you get video at the same time, so you can get the qualitative analysis. You can send that to your coach or compare that side by side with your older lifts and get the velocity and power data and range of motion data all at the same time.
So you're really cool. Using like an AI, kind of like the facial tracking, like how on Snapchat they have you can have like the dog ears basically. This is like an AI filter, exactly. That type of technology that's going to like track your body to measure it versus like pulling a string and measuring that speed type of measurement.
Yeah, so that's where we're going to head, we think, with this. But the current version literally just tracks the barbell. So it finds the weight plate, it finds the barbell, and it tracks that. And because plates have a known circumference and a known size, we can then infer from the computer vision, all right, well, here's the plate. The plate is this big, and it can then track it in real time with really good precision. So things like AI body position limb tracking, we're going to add those kind of features down the track. We're currently in beta with the app, so we're not at that stage yet, but that's down the track. So then potentially you could add in things like squat depth analysis for powerlifting. You could do pause counts, tempo counts, things like that as well by tracking body position and barbell at the same time.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool. And that's another, you mentioned tempo and pauses. I think people misunderstand the purpose of those in a lot of different applications between either strength sports, producing more power, hypertrophy focused training. So I guess what I'm curious about is like the applications of velocity based training in these different modalities. How would you use velocity based training for your, power lifter versus your, running back versus your bodybuilder? Mm-hmm.
Which one do you want to start with?
Oh man.
I know. In all situations.
As a bodybuilder, I'm a little bit biased, but let's start with that.
Let's start
with bodybuilding. You want to
bodybuilding.
start with bodybuilding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bodybuilding, yeah, for sure.
Bodybuilding, yeah.
That's one of the less common uses. So I think for the bodybuilder, you actually wouldn't care too much about to give you context, the running back. We should start with the running back. My bad.
Yeah, let's start with
the running back.
Yeah, because that's explosive concentrics.
Yeah, and so for the running back, really what they're looking for the gym is transfer to athletic performance. They don't really care how much they squat, as long as that squat helps them jump higher, run faster, change direction better, take tackles better, all that kind of stuff. So the squat is a means to an end. The squat itself isn't the purpose. The squat transfers into athletic performance. So for them, load on the bar is nice. Obviously you've got to be strong to play American football. You've got to be strong to play any sport, but there is an upper limit to that. Getting them from a double body weight or a 2.5 times body weight squat to a triple body weight squat probably doesn't have that much benefit. In a field setting, they're going to move their own body weight at maximum velocity, and they're going to maybe move one, maybe two other opponents for half a second. Trying to get another inch in a tackle sort of thing. So for them, there comes a point where more weight on the bar isn't actually that beneficial. They reach a law of diminishing returns where there's no more benefit. So for them, a transfer into, move that double body weight squat, but move it faster. Can you do it at 0.65 meters per second compared to your old lifts is a really valuable way of adding another layer of motivation beyond just plates. And so you'll see athletes get really number hungry and it's like plates, more plates. And they load up the bar, but not really serving that point, which is for them to become better athletes. So velocity is another way to go, okay, let's not worry about that double body weight. Let's just go 1.75 times body weight on the squat, 300 pounds, 400 pounds, whatever it might be, but move it with really great intent and really great velocity, and maybe even track power. So wattage on that lift, or with their Olympic lifts, you don't worry too much about chasing a new 1RM on their power cleans, for example. You might track how many watts can you produce. So can we get to 1,500 watts of power output on this lift, which you take from the load multiplied by the velocity and sort of factor those things in there. And so you can use this as another way of setting goals and have that athlete chase qualities that will then transfer better to their athletic performance. So there's really good research that literally just giving your athletes that velocity number, this is your number, try and beat it, is enough to increase performance beyond not having that feedback. So it's really valuable.
Mm-hmm. I feel like especially in like athletic, the running back situation where, you're producing power, not necessarily just aiming for strength all the time. And so the difference between power and strength, I think it's important to understand in this application, is that what you're focused on producing is more so power.
Yeah. And you do both, like depending on the time of the season, the emphasis, that specific athlete's strengths and weaknesses, for lack of a better term, but maybe they're coming close to in season, so close to round one of the season. Well, we've developed strength over the off season. We've built muscle mass with our hypertrophy training, which we'll talk about in a second. Now it's time to turn that strength into rate of force development. So let's take a little bit of load off the bar, but move it quicker. Let's do more Olympic lifting. Let's do plyometrics. Let's do loaded jumps, trap bar jumps, explosive sled shoves, things like that. And then the problem with those is you require a submaximal load to reach peak power. Peak power, depending on the exercise, is 50 to 70% of your 1RM. So if you can't go heavier, the athletes say, well, what's the point? It's like, do it harder. And the coach is like, come on, more, give me everything, effort. And it's like, well, quantify that for me. Give me a number to chase. And so velocity-based training, tracking those things outside just loads, like just clean in Australia, 80 kilos. Decent level of clean weight, 80 to 100 kilos, just clean that. But I want you to do it for as much power as possible. So every week they warm up, get to 80 kilos, 100 kilos, 200 pounds, whatever it might be. But then it's like, okay, last week you hit 1,500 watts. Can you give me 1,550? And can we get 10 singles at that power output? And that's going to increase that rate of force development, that explosive power that we really want. And that's then giving the athlete a number to chase. It's like, okay, can you get to leaderboard in the gym, top 10 athletes, power in terms of, watts per pound of body weight? Who can get the biggest number? Who can top that leaderboard? And you can make it divided by body weight, so it's nice and fair across your entire football team. And then they can have at it. And that's going to drive more intent, more quality into that training.
That's super. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for, I'm just thinking about like sports, especially like football. Cause like when I was playing football, there'd always be the people who were like really strong in the gym and really weak on the field. And I feel like this might be something that correlates there. Like, it's like, maybe you can lift, there's like certain lifts that you're really strong with, but are you able to really like pop when you hit somebody? Or like boxing, for instance, like you might be really strong, but do your punches like pop? Like, you can't knock somebody out if you can't like pop your punches. And that's not really like a strength thing. It's more of like this speed and power thing.
Exactly. We talk about trucks versus Ferraris. So a truck is going to be a great powerlifter. They're going to be able to move enormous amounts of weight, but come in the boxing ring, come on the field, their rate of force development, the speed at which they can develop a decent percentage of that maximum force is a lot slower. So their ramp is kind of this slow general build-in strength, as opposed to those Ferraris. They pop off the line. I should probably use the Tesla analogy, like an electric vehicle, how they kind of surge off the line, they pop and explode out of the gates. Those athletes might not have that, maximum 1RM like the other guys, but they can use more of their strength in that short window of time. They need it for a jump, a punch, a sprint, a change of direction, whatever it might be. So it's kind of like usable force versus maximum force. They're not both the same. They're not the same thing. And so, velocity numbers allows you to track that. If you can put that same weight but with more velocity, that's a good sign of more rate of force development.
I feel like this would also be valuable, when we're talking about strength sports. You mentioned powerlifting and increasing our total strength. There is a velocity component that goes along with it. And most powerlifters, they structure their programming on percentage-based training to facilitate faster and slower reps, which is kind of what you're doing. This just provides another metric. So like, how fast do you find the average rep moves for most people? Are there averages about like at 70% of your one rep max, it should move about this fast. At 80, it should move about this fast, and so on?
Yeah, so that is a loaded question. So traditionally, there's been a lot of fixed values. So a fixed zone. So absolute strength is between 0.5 and 0.25 meters per second, like it's really locked off. But it is so dependent. So we here in our gym here at Core Advantage, we train a lot of basketballers and Australian footballers, and they tend to be long, sort of more long rangey athletes. So not awesome at maximum strength stuff, but quite powerful and quite twitchy, kind of good plyometric type athletes. So for them, if we got a 6'7" small forward or power forward here in Australia, our basketballs are a little bit smaller than over in America. So 6'7", maybe playing power forward, their squat range of motion is going to be quite different to a high level, 5'6" powerlifter. And so their range of motion is different. So that gives them more time to accelerate the bar, but also gives them longer femurs to have to work around. So it's a swings and roundabouts. So there are no fixed velocities, I think, that work for every athlete and every lifter and every movement and lift. I think instead it's more about contextual. So what you did compared to your recent or all-time best. So what's your 30-day average on an 80 kilo back squat? What are you doing today? How do they stack up compared to each other? So I would, anytime I'm starting with velocity training or starting athletes, like the first couple of weeks is just collecting some data, just getting some rough ideas of what you move, 80%, 70% of your 1RM, maybe even doing a 1RM in that time to work out what that velocity is going to look like, to use that to then program and base the rest of our upcoming weeks and blocks off.
Mm-hmm. While you were talking about the, a 6'7" basketballer performing a squat, I was thinking of, a video of Lebron James that was circulating the internet a few years back. You might remember this. And he was the one where he was squatting and everyone shit on him because he was doing like quarter squats. But really, his trainer knows what he's doing. People just didn't understand how it was being applied and the application of what they were doing. He's so tall, and I'd love your opinion on this. Like, I don't know if that man can actually get down into a full squat with a sufficient load on the bar. So were they breaking up his movement into multiple different, like the full squat into multiple different movements?
Yeah. So there's one question is, can he squat to full depth? But the second more important question is, does it matter for LeBron James, the greatest basketball player in the world, arguably right now?
Yeah. No, he's not squatting to full depth to dunk.
Exactly. And so there's actually I'm going to get science nerd on here. There's a really good study from, I think it was Matthew Ray and a group of researchers from 2016. I can get the link for you if you want to put it in the show notes.
Oh yeah.
He did a study where they did quarter squats, half squats and full squats. And then they tested vertical leap before and after. I think it was like an 8-week training block in some reasonably trained uni students, college students. And what they found was the quarter squat group crapped all over the other two groups in terms of vertical leap improvements because they were able to lift heavier loads through a shorter range. So it was more of a neural adaptation as opposed to muscular. And so by adding more weight and taking it through less range of motion, when you jump, you only go down to about a half squat, maybe quarter squat position, depending on the type of jump. So there's no real benefit in the short term to training that full depth squat. There are other benefits like hypertrophy and taking your adductors through range and full muscle activation and other things that you get from full depth. But in season, LeBron James, 82 games, he's playing 40 minutes a game. Who cares if he gets to full depth? He just needs to get some sort of stimulus into his nervous system, into his muscles, keep a little bit of strength up, keep him healthy, but not blow his knees up or irritate his angry calf or his ankle that he's got from a rolled ankle he had a couple of weeks ago. All those factors come into it. And so the trainers made decisions like risk-reward ratio. There's no real value in going deep right now at this time. Maybe he does it at different times of the year, but right now we don't need it. So we'll just go quarter squats, get a little bit of weight on there, get enough to stimulate and maintain some strength, and we get back to on-court, which is what really matters for someone like LeBron.
Comes down to like principle specificity and like how you're actually applying your training. So for the average people who are listening to this podcast, who either we have some bodybuilders, we have a lot of strength athletes, like power lifters and whatnot, and then we have a lot of just general health people. How would we incorporate velocity-based training into just general health and fitness for the average gym goer who wants to, just move a little bit better in their daily life?
Yeah. So I think it's another metric. It's another way of, tracking progress, keeping you motivated, staying engaged with your training beyond just, you'll get to a point where, for example, with a lift, it's going to be tough to add more weight without getting really serious about it, adding sessions, adding volume, increasing your calories, things like that. And so for that person, they might not go above a certain level on their strength with something. So then they can start mixing up their goals. Okay, let's chase power on this movement. Let's chase velocity. Or maybe they're working on that full depth squat. So you can use metrics like range of motion from a velocity-based training device and measure range of motion consistency or measure depth, and you can track that over time. So like, okay, I'm currently hitting 50 centimeters, or whatever that is in inches, on my back squat. I'm a bit above parallel. Maybe I want to get below parallel for whatever reason. So let's chase 55 centimeters, and you can use, say, a progressively lower box to chase that more range of motion on a squat, as an example. So there's a bunch of different ways to go about that, but then with just velocity numbers, just like, it's just another form of motivation. So I squatted 100 kilos this week for this velocity. Next week, what can I do? Can I beat that number? Can I get a little bit faster, or a little bit lower, or a little bit more power?
Yeah, I think that, understanding that there are multiple metrics of progress is something that I think people have been missing for a long time, because otherwise you're just chasing load and you're chasing reps, and progress isn't linear. But I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, but I think that, most people should have a variety of metrics of progress that they focus on improving. And every time they walk into the gym, they can pick one or two. And depending on how they feel, that's why I like your technology of like, giving you an idea of kind of how you're performing that day. Is this a PR day? How fast am I moving? Am I moving slow? What should I aim to improve today? Am I in a position where I can improve load? Am I in a position where I can improve rep? Should I focus on range of motion? Should I focus on velocity? And I think all of those things kind of need to improve at an equal rate over time. Otherwise, I think it's a recipe for disaster. I think that's why a lot of people get hurt.
Yeah, and they're often linked. Like your velocity will dictate whether today's a good day or a bad day. But if you incorporate that time under tension and that tempo idea we were talking about earlier, there's another way. So if you're having a day where you just beat, like your nervous system's fried, you're dragging your knuckles into the gym, it takes twice as long to do your warm-up because you just can't be bothered, but you're there, you've showed up, excellent work. So you do your first few warm-up sets and they confirm it. Today's a bad day. You're tired, the velocities are low, range of motion's all over the place, so you're inconsistent on your technique, kind of things like that. Today's a good day for some tempo work. Let's do a little bit of volume. Let's get some peripheral fatigue. Let's get some hypertrophy type stimulus without worrying about the heavy stuff. So you do your first 2 or 3 warm-ups. They're in the hole. The velocities are all red flags, 10% below your 30-day average, something like that. And you go, okay, let's just do 3 sets of 8 at 70%. Let's just get some burn in, get a little bit of DOMs going, get some blood flowing, get myself feeling good, but not smash my nervous system again. And so then you can go, all right, well, let's chase a different goal. Let's look for 3 minutes of time under tension on an exercise. Don't worry about reps, don't worry about load. Let's just get 3 minutes of volume into that. And so you can use a velocity-based training technology to track tempo and track how much time you spent eccentric, how long the pauses were, things like that. And so you can still get value out of those quote unquote bad days, even though you weren't ready to max out. And then on the flip side, you do a couple of warm-ups, you're feeling amazing, PR. Let's get after either a new velocity PR, or let's get after a new 1RM or a 2RM, whatever it might be. Let's really push things on those days when you're feeling great.
It's a valuable tool. I was literally it's funny that we're having this conversation. I think last week, and throughout last week, I was having conversations with my girlfriend, with people in our Facebook group about, dude, I don't always have great workouts. I don't always want to go to the gym. And sometimes I go to the gym and I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. And if I didn't know what I know now and have the ability to focus on other metrics, I would just chalk that session up as a wash. I'd be like, it's just not a good session, or I'd go home. But you can still progress even though you're not feeling your best. There's other variables that you can improve upon. So having something that makes it easier to assess where you're at, rather than get started, get warming up and, kind of feel it out, but to actually have something tell you, I think is valuable. So I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your app. How, yes, it tracks velocity. We understand that it follows the bar path. I know you said you're working on things like range of motion. Is this currently available?
Yeah, so at the time of recording, we are in beta. So the app is available on iOS, but you have to get it via test flight. If you just get in touch with me on Instagram or Twitter, I can send you an invite, and it's a pretty open beta. So if you ask to be in it, we'll let you in it basically. So just get in touch with me. I'm VBT Coach on socials, and I'll give you the invite. So it's pretty easy to get into. We're about to launch though, so we're not too far away from actually going live on the iOS App Store. So if you're listening to this a couple of weeks later, you may very well want to check the App Store and search for Metric. We might be there. But yeah, so at the moment we track mean velocity and range of motion on barbell lifts. The goal is to add things like power, time under tension, tempo, all those kind of metrics as well. And then also track things outside the barbell. So dumbbells, body weight things, body position stuff like we were talking about earlier on with some sort of limb tracking stuff. We want to add that as well for sure. Yeah.
That's super cool. So with the limb tracking, I'm curious about that. Understanding that the body is just a series of levers, any possibility of application on sort of like form corrections for how the body position could be improved to produce more power?
We think so. We don't know how yet.
Cool. That'd be really cool. That would be really cool.
That's in the really cool bucket that we might need an extra developer or two to just, you just play around with this and see what you can find for us.
It's probably because like everybody's body's different, right? So you'd have to, you're not just measuring like a plate is all generally the same size and it moves from point A to point B. So you can track that. Like that's got to be more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then also you're getting into, like we discussed, you're getting into the subjective realm where different coaches want different things from different movements. So, LeBron James coach might think a quarter squat is optimal. A powerlifting coach might say, unless it's below parallel, it doesn't count. So now we're starting to have a debate about what coaching looks good. What's a good power clean? What's a good power snatch? All those kind of things are the things where technique becomes really valuable in terms of expressing power by getting better positions. Everyone has different opinions on. So that might get into the realm of machine learning, AI type stuff, where we aggregate a whole bunch of video of elite performers performing these movements and go, okay, the best power clean power is expressed from a 30-degree hip angle.
Yeah.
Over the course of, if you're between 5'9" and 6'2", you need to get to a 30-degree hip angle and peak power should occur here and your catch should be this deep. You can start making those things, but that requires a lot of data and a lot of processing. So that's down the track. That'll be a future us problem. But I think that's a really cool one. And I think that's a potential future use for velocity. The idea of collecting that data and going, we talked about what's a good velocity, what's a standard sort of thing. At the moment, it's kind of just you should be determining what your velocity is compared to your own velocity in the past. But in the future, if you're within a certain height category, a certain limb length, then we go, okay, well, for you should be able to do a deadlift at this velocity at 1 times body weight. That would be a standard for you. And so you can develop those standards. But again, you need a lot of data and you need a lot of sort of more research in this space to be done to sort of standardize numbers. So people in the past have kind of set fixed numbers based on small samples. And those samples haven't translated to other exercises, other populations. And I think that's the future, is where we actually start going, okay, this is what these college athletes could do. This is what these civilians could do. This is what these rugby players, these powerlifters could do. Aggregate it all together and go, okay, this is kind of a bell curve of a good velocity at double body weight on a power clean, whatever it might be.
That's super cool. And yeah, the coolest part is that like your members, the people who are using your app are providing you with all this data. So you're getting all of this data from all these different people, and that's going to be able to produce a lot of really good research. And things are only going to get better.
We're not collecting data yet. But
you're not?
For sure.
Okay, down the track.
Okay. We're still in beta. So it's at the moment the app is a pretty simple tool. So it's you get it, you can record a set, you can get your data out of it, and then continue. In the future, we're going to add features where it saves all your data. You get that contextual stuff we're talking about. So you can you can do a set, and instantly it tells you last time you did this exercise at this weight, this is the numbers you put out, and give you plus minuses and things like that. And you can make those changes and then track progress on estimated 1RM or peak power over time. And you can track those numbers as you go within the app, all automatic. And at that point, then we can then ask people to opt in potentially to data collections. Like, do you want to be part of a larger cohort of making velocity standardized and getting that research done and getting those numbers for sure?
That'd be super cool. So as far as like development of the app, what are some of the problems that you ran into in getting this to work the way that you wanted it to, and how'd you overcome those? Because this sounds very complex, to say the least.
Yeah, it's been 2.5 years. So we've been working on this for a while. My brother, David, is our lead developer, and he's got an engineering and electrical engineering and computer science degree. Very smart guy. And we're training with the string devices. And so we'd come into the gym, we'd lift together, we'd bench and deadlift, and we'd train with it, and I'd go, oh, you should be doing this with your velocity and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, why do we have to use these strings? What's going on with it? Like, it's in the way, and it's, Bluetooth problems and all this stuff. He's like, I reckon I can do this with a camera on your phone. All right, let's go. Let's get to work on that. So we started tinkering around with that. The big problem earlier was precision, obviously. So just actually getting it to stay on the plate throughout the video and stay with the barbell and not bounce around all over the place. But the more recent problems we're having is frame rate. So getting the phone to process enough frames to get a smooth enough sample. So there's been a big jump going from 30 into 40 and now into about 55, 60 frames that we're currently processing at. So that's been a big jump in precision, because then you can accurately detect the top and bottom of the rep. Because at the top, that's when you're moving your fastest. You get that little flick. And if you miss that and you get on the way back down, that'll take a lot of your velocity off the rep. But if you're on the next rep, you then do get that, your number's going to be all over the place. And so we've had a bit of trouble smoothing that out and getting precise measurements on that. So that's been a big problem, and getting that done in real time so that you press stop and instantly get your results. You know, it doesn't sit there and analyze and buffer for a minute between sets. You want to be able to press stop, look at your phone and go, oh, cool, there are my numbers, go on to my next superset or do my rest or whatever it is I'm doing in between sets, and then away you go. So those have been some challenges. And then getting high resolution too goes with that too. So getting it to actually process HD footage, so it doesn't look like it's been shot on a potato and actually looks nice and crisp, so that people can then share it to social and use that data and send it to their coach or whatever it might be, has been part of the problem too. And so we're at a pretty good place now. We're at kind of 50 plus frames on most phones. So it'll process 50 frames a second, which gives us really good smooth data. And then HD 720 pixel footage across all devices, which has been great. That's really improved the reliability. So it's consistently telling us good numbers, which makes it a much more reliable tool.
That's really cool. I imagine like the type of phone that you're using, does that have any impact on it? Like if someone's using an iPhone 8 versus, I just got a new one.
I can't believe people are still on iPhone 7s. Yeah. People in the beta are on iPhone 7.
I don't know how they still work, man. I had a 10 just like a few months ago, and dude, it was just a paperweight. It could make phone calls, send text messages, and post to Instagram. And that's it.
I'm on an XS, and I'm like, it's March. Can I wait till September till the 14 comes out and not have to go to the 13, then straight away they release next? I'm limping through till the end of the year to get the new one, I think. But yeah, I'm having the same problem. It's slow. Dude,
the best part is you open up that like front facing camera and see your face for the first time, and it's like never seen your face like that before. The quality is just insane. So that's what I'm thinking is like in an application where precision is so important, I can only imagine that like having a nicer, newer phone is going to be helpful.
Yes. So a newer phone will have a better frame rate, basically. So the app throttles frame rate on a lower phone. And we were having problems where I still couldn't believe that people on 7s. People on iPhone 7 sending in crash reports where the app was just crashing on their phone because it was trying to do too much work and it was overloading the memory, and then the phone would crash. So we had some big problems with that. We have this week actually with the latest version 0.2.1, I think it's called. That one has got a big improvement where it's improved the memory use. So the real-time memory has come way down. So we hope that will improve some of those iPhone 7 crashes. But yes, still the quality of your phone and the amount of horsepower it has, the amount of grunt it's got under the hood inside that phone will mean it can process faster and get you more frames and therefore slightly more precise data. We've been doing side-by-side, like two phones recording the same set though from slightly different angles, and the reliability between them is still pretty good. So we've got it to a point where, within 5% kind of stuff. So it's not going to actually affect your numbers. Not like you put your phone 10 degrees further out to the side and all of a sudden your numbers go way up through the roof or way through the floor. Yeah. So it is still pretty consistent like that. So we're pretty happy with that, because some of the apps that do this kind of velocity tracking stuff are just sort of general tools. It's like, there's roughly a plate, we'll roughly track it and give you rough numbers. Mm-hmm. We're trying to actually track the plate frame by frame, which is quite a different and obviously much more challenging way to go about it, but you get much more precise data. Mm-hmm. But in saying that, we want to create a tool that you can, in a tripod, rest it against a dumbbell, against your water bottle, whatever it might be in the gym, and just point it roughly at your set from side on, and you'll get the same numbers. So that's been a lot of, I didn't talk about that before, there's been a lot of the challenges getting it to a position where it's robust enough that any user can get, okay, side on, don't do it handheld, follow 3 or 4 instructions and get pretty good data straight away. So that's been a big part of it as well. And so it works kind of out to about 30 degrees from the end of the barbell, and will work at pretty good height levels too. So it doesn't have to be exactly perfectly end onto the bar, it can be slightly around, and you'll still get pretty good numbers. And that will improve as we continue refining as well. Yeah, that's really impressive because, as a coach, I ask people to send me training videos and I'm like, dude, what do you do? Like, you're not in the frame. What are you doing? So I was curious about user error, but it sounds like you guys have worked around that really well. I mean, I've used apps for clients to track bar path, for example, and it'll draw a line, and you're right. It's very
there's a plate. Like, let's get close enough, you know? So it's not always accurate, path,
but not so much for velocity.
Exactly. So yeah, so it sounds like you've really kind of eliminated a lot of the potential user error here.
Yeah, the plate still needs, like, you got to be in the frame, like you said.
Yeah.
So people have been sending us videos where like half their bench press is cut off. Like the top of the frame is here and the plate goes all the way out at the top of their bench press. Like, just take the phone back a meter and get a little more room on that there. But once you're in the frame and you're roughly side on with the right shape and size of plate, which is just a standard, calibrated Olympic lifting plate or bumper plate will do the job, then you're good to go. And so as long as you get that in frame, and then we've got troubleshooting. So if you don't get readings, we've got troubleshooting. So like, did you do this? Did you position this? So there's some easy tips for people to get that right in the future. And once you've done it a couple of times, you get a pretty good idea of what's good. Yeah. And then it's pretty robust. And we're continuing to improve that too. So that's something, because it's an app, it's not a hardware. We can continue updating the app and improve its precision and get it better and stuff like that as well.
Do you think that this will, technology like this and others that follow, because I imagine they will, are going to just, well, I'm sure people like technology and
absolutely
chances of the chances of seeing people filming themselves in the gym with the intention of learning how they can improve. Athletes watch film. When you played football in high school, you watched film. Basketball, you watched film. Every other sport you play, you watch film with the intention of figuring out what your weak points are and how you can improve. As coaches, we assess training videos to figure out what your weak points are and where you can improve. A lot of people they're hesitant to film themselves in the gym. They don't want to look like that guy or that girl. They're not comfortable with it. They're taking up space. But what do you think about the future of people actually going to the gym with technology like this and aiming to actually improve and not just go to the gym to move? Like, a lot of people I want to see people go to the gym and film themselves to figure out how they can move better. And I think that's how we're going to progress. I think technology like this is going to help people.
Exactly. What's that? That's saying the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed. I think we're in that stage now where like the hardware devices are really widespread at the pro level and at the high level college kind of space. Yes. But I think because of price, because of inconvenience, because of carrying a whole thing around in your backpack on the way to the gym, has meant that it hasn't trickled into the mass adoption kind of level. At the same time, powerlifters, I work with a powerlifting coach. I'm not doing powerlifting, but he's sort of showing me how he programs. So I get a feel for what that kind of training is like. I haven't done much of that in the past. As a coach, I try and learn other modalities so that I can then apply it to my own training. And the athletes I work with, they just film everything. I was in the gym. It's based here in Melbourne. I was in there training with my coach, and there's 3 or 4 other athletes in there. All of them had a tripod. All of them had their phone recording everything, accessories, machine lifts, the whole lot. Because their coach, they've all got different coaches within the gym. Their coach wants to see everything. I want to see your top set or top couple of sets of every lift, and I want to know the numbers, the RPE, the load, the reps, how it felt, all that kind of stuff. So when they do their program, I was like, your bench from 2 weeks ago, this looked great. Pause wasn't long enough. Blah, blah, blah. You can do that stuff because it's all online these days. Everyone's programming via the internet. And so our app and other ones like it have the potential to, ours in particular, will overlay data onto the video. So when you send that video to your coach, they can get the quality of watching you squat, but there in the top corner is power output, range of motion by rep, velocity, all that kind of data is added to the video. So you get a much richer experience. So you can combine the subjective, your squat's not deep enough, push your knees out, sit back in your heels, all that kind of stuff that you're already looking for with this is great velocity. Look how fast that is. The last rep here is really slow. You're probably pretty close to failure. Next time just do 4, not 5. All that kind of stuff can be added in with that sort of just simple video overlay. So I think that's going to be a really cool feature from a coaching point of view. Is like use this app to film your stuff. You'll get data as you're going, but more importantly, send me the videos. Or a future feature, the coaches can then access their clients' profiles in the Metric app, and you can have a view only where you can go in and browse their history of training, look at their performance over time, and do it within our app. And so it's all no need to send it via WhatsApp and then fill up your phone's memory. You can just do it via the cloud via a coach's platform.
That is super cool.
I'm curious from the viewpoint of someone who's creating one of these apps. Like, have you seen like technological advancement around this type of thing, has it been kind of like exponential recently, or like has there been a lot of, because I feel like kind of what you guys were touching on earlier, like I've used some of these apps in the past, like years ago, and it just seemed like a very rough, like it wasn't really like that helpful to me. It was like a pretty like, you know, rough estimation, or some like the wearable technology, you know, like Apple Watch or these different things. They give you like a sleep score, which doesn't really take into consideration, like it's like almost basically useless because it doesn't take into consideration so many different things. There's obviously like metrics in there that you can use if you know how, as in like your heart rate and you know, different things that you can use to make it like good. But like the actual like sleep score, for instance, is just kind of like an arbitrary number that they come up with. Where it seems like you guys have had, like you guys are having like, you know, your technology's very cutting edge. I'm kind of thinking like in the future, like how crazy is this stuff going to get in the next 5 years, 10 years? Like, you know, is this year, is it 100 times better than things were 3 years ago? And you know, what do you see like with the future of kind of like technology mixed in with fitness?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a big question. That's a big one. There's a lot going on there. So I think we're kind of the first of our kind in the velocity-based training. I'll talk velocity-based training specifically first. So we're the first of our kind to be an app only with this level of precision. So we've got a fundamentally different approach to it that the other app only, like the bar path one you were talking about before, Josh, that app is kind of fundamentally different to how we approach it. And so that's how we're able to achieve the precision at the different camera angles that we're getting currently. So I think I'm hoping over the next 3 years that we can really change that game, like specifically with the Metric VBT app, that we will be the leading edge of a next generation of velocity tracking, where it's more passive, I think, is the real key here. So you can engage with your data, you know, the actual raw data rep by rep as much as you like, or you can just set your phone upside on, use your Apple Watch or your smartwatch, press record all your sets, and then finish your workout, and then go have a look and go, oh yeah, cool, interesting. That's my data, cool. But you're always collecting it, just like your Apple Watch is always collecting your calorie count and your step count during the day. In your workout, you're just always collecting. You collect all your sets of deadlift. You put the phone in the position once, do it all on your watch, and you can review the data afterwards. Or if you're a real number nerd, you can go and you can look at every set by set, review stuff like that. And potentially, I think, with things like a sleep score, or in this case, a velocity score, a readiness score, whatever whatever we decide to call it, I think it's really about the quality of the data coming in. So if you get I'm not sure, how much can I swear on your show?
As much as you want.
Okay. If you have a stream of shit data coming onto your technology, then your sleep score is a product of that stream of shit. It's going to be hard to filter that and turn that into a beautiful stream of fresh, clear mountain water of, you know, good data. So your sleep score is a product of the data coming in. So Apple Watch historically, Whoop is the same. Accelerometers have been the same in velocity-based training. The quality of data coming in just hasn't been that good. So you can only make so many estimates based on numbers that are unreliable and invalid. I think we're in a point now where things are getting a lot more precise though. So Whoop 4.0 has got twice the number of sensors and all this kind of stuff, getting a lot fancier. They've just acquired Push, which is another velocity-based training app. So it looks like they're going to do something in the workout tracking rep detection space, I think, which will give them a big edge, because they've got the same problem where their data coming into their device, because it's a wrist-based heart rate, which isn't very good, and that's just a known thing, then they're limited. Like they can make guesses with readiness scores, and the readiness score is kind of just a way of averaging out all the data they're getting. And so it's kind of like a cheats way of going, well, we can't precisely tell you this number is in real time, so we'll turn it into a single number, which is also easier for consumers. So you can just go, okay, my score is 40, that's bad, 80, that's good. You can make those quick inferences, but because the stream of shit data coming in means it is a bit tricky to make good guesses. So I think that's one part of it, is that the quality of data coming in will improve. And like, not to beat up Whoop or Apple Watch, they're doing so much better. Each version of that device is getting better and better. So the quality of their data will continue to improve. In the VBT space, though, I think the quality of data has always been good. So the string devices have been great. Some of the accelerometers have been quite good. The rack-mounted camera solutions are quite precise. Metric, our VBT app, is becoming quite precise. So I think the quality of data coming in has never really been a problem, even from the very start. I think the place where VBT has fallen down, though, is they've done a poor job of sharing that data with the user in the app in real time. Unless you are like a seasoned, done a PhD in velocity-based training level person, interpreting the data and then sharing that with your athlete to go, okay, here's your velocity numbers. This is what that means. That step has always been missing. And so it's like, I'll give the app to an athlete in our gym. I say, hey, track a set with this, have a go. And they instantly ask, well, what does that mean? And I think all the technology in the past has failed to answer that question. They just put the numbers on screen and it's like, well, you deal with it. But what we really want to do, and I think the place where we can really take velocity-based training to a wider audience, like we still haven't talked about bodybuilding, so we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But to the more a wider population, taking VBT to them is really about giving them the data, but also giving them with context. Okay, this is your numbers. This is what that means. This is some estimates and inferences you can make from that data. I think that's the missing step that we really want to fix and really want to capitalize on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lot of what we do as coaches. We assess that data for our clients. And so at this point, you kind of need a professional to digest all that data and give it back to you in a way
or a team of interns.
Yeah.
At the pro level, they have a team of interns crunching the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And then, actually give you actionable steps for what you're supposed to do with that. Because otherwise, like you said, we get a sleep score or a readiness score, and we have very vague ideas and concepts of how we should actually go about our training and our recovery and, whatever it is that, we're aiming to improve upon to help improve those scores. So right now you have a coach. If you could make that data very easy to understand with an applicable outcome, I think that would completely change the industry forever.
That's what we hope. Yeah, for sure.
That was really cool.
I think absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like wild technology. And like we said, it's only going to get better. A lot of people I hope are going to start using this stuff and, applying it to their training to, get better outcomes, to improve their idea of what progress looks like. How do you see this, working its way into sort of like private sectors? Do you guys have plans to partner with, other large organizations, big box gyms, get their trainers using this stuff? What's your growth plan look like for that?
I haven't even thought about big box gyms. I think the initial audience that's craving for a good tool is the strength athlete. So the strength athlete, the bodybuilder, the committed recreational athlete. So they're not a pro athlete, but they compete. So maybe they're a state or a national level powerlifter, or they actually go on stage for bodybuilding, that kind of that level of athlete. I think they're craving a simple tool that they can use as much or as little as they want. Because often, you fork over $1,000, you get one of these devices and you go, well, I better make it worth it. Better really add value from day one. And so they obsess over the numbers and it becomes at a detriment to their other numbers, RPE, load, reps, all those other factors they should be worrying about. They then flip that attention onto velocity. With something like our app, it can become just a more passive observer. And so it's like, collect the data as you go. Sometimes you'll use it, sometimes you won't. But you don't have to do much work to get the data. So you do your training session, there it is in the app, ready to go, easy peasy. Oh, interesting, cool. There's my numbers. And you can make changes based on that. A little fatigue today, do a few less reps, feeling good, a little more weight, things like that. So I think that's a really important audience for us, that mass adoption at the sort of, I suppose you'd call it like the pro recreational athlete, if you will, where they're committed to their strength training, they really enjoy it, but they're not in a professional college sort of institute. And then I think the other place, once we get this good, is college level, high school sports, things like that, where a high school can have 10 iPads in the gym, all of them running the app on a tripod. Pick your name, pick your exercise, add the load, and away you go. And there's not much input from the athlete in training, so it's quite simple for the coach to do that. And then maybe that connects to a leaderboard on a TV at the front of the gym, where it's like, all right, this month, guys, we're competing on power cleans. Who can do the most power on their power cleans? And you create some competition and drive some intent, not just in load. So athletes at those levels, they get really hungry about the weight. But if you can make them hungry about other qualities, like we talked about that transfer for the footballer, then we can get those kind of qualities going as well. And then from there, it kind of depends. Yeah, I suppose the big box gyms is kind of an option. Teaching personal trainers and fitness enthusiasts how to use this to take their training to another level if they're getting committed to it and they're getting serious about it. But then also there's pro level applications, Olympic sports, professional sports, NBA, NFL, all those kind of sports as well, for sure.
Yeah,
they're already using a lot of this sort of technology, and so we can jump in on that too.
Yeah, I think of like the show Sports Science that used to be on TV. It was like this is like a real world application that fits in your pocket of sports science. It sounds really cool.
Exactly.
And at the big box gym level, I started training at a big box gym. That was when I first started out with personal training. And a lot of them, they want you to keep your clients interested, and sorry to the big box gym owners out there and people who work there, but they want you to keep your clients interested by like switching stuff up and like keeping it exciting.
We call it exertainment.
Yeah, exactly.
Exercise means entertainment. Yeah,
exactly. It's not the most productive. It's not the most conducive way to actually achieve long-term sustainable progress. So giving people and giving trainers at these gyms, I imagine, more tools to keep their clients excited and show them other rates of progress outside of their body fat, their scale weight, their reps, and their load, I think would be valuable. So you have a lot of application here. I do want to talk and I do want to learn about its application in bodybuilding. Selfishness a little bit. So
we're going to miss it.
No, we're going to make time for it because I want to learn about this. So how can I actively incorporate velocity-based training into my hypertrophy-based training?
Yep. So I think, first of all, I don't think velocity-based training is the right name for what we're doing here. So velocity is just one of the, and that's not just bodybuilding, that's globally. I think velocity-based training, it's not just about velocity. It's more like, I haven't come up with a good name. It's like data-driven training, objective measurement of training. Like it's really what we're doing is we're measuring training in more variables, in more axes than just load and reps is what we're doing. We're adding variables of objective data so we can make decisions based on that. And velocity just happens to be the most common. In a bodybuilding setting though, I don't think velocity is that helpful because if you're doing higher rep sets, so you're taking 10s, 12s, 15s, you're taking things closer to failure. What's a more interesting measurement is things like tempo and time under tension. And so we often measure training in reps, but I could do 12 reps of a back squat full depth, or I could do 12 reps of a standing calf raise, and they are very different amounts of time. And the muscle isn't really responding to reps per se, but more time under tension and the intensity of that tension.
Yep.
So adding more weight is going to increase the tension. So it's more type 2 motor units and that sort of stuff. But then also the amount of time. So the duration of that fatigue is going to affect the peripheral adaptations and things like that. So I think with velocity-based training, just tracking tempo. So, you're doing a 2-second eccentric, a 2-second pause, a 1-second concentric, doing your set and then looking, I actually only did 1-second eccentrics. I was going too fast. And so that set of 12 was supposed to be a 45 to 60 second rep set, but I only got 35 seconds because I was rushing. And so you do that set, you then send that to your coach and your coach goes, slow down. And that sort of feedback I think is really valuable. And so that's within a single set. But when you then track that over an entire workout, you can start looking at how much time you're spending on each body part. So you can start adding together all your chest exercises, for example, all your upper body push exercises and going, okay, I'm only accumulating 4 tons of load and 6 minutes of work per week. I should really be getting double that, 12 minutes of work, whatever it might be, and then trying to progressively overload not just weight and reps, but the amount of time and the amount of tonnage I do on that movement. And so that can also be then turned into a metric like work, which is measured in joules or calories. How much actual work am I doing on my presses? And so you can go, okay, we're looking for 45 seconds per set, 5 sets twice a week, whatever your number might be. And then you can track that over time. So as a bodybuilding coach, you can program outside just load and reps. You can start programming, I want 45-second sets with 3-second eccentrics. Or I want you to take all your sets to at least 30% fatigue. From the first rep in terms of speed to the last rep, can you achieve a 30% decrement in velocity? That suggests we're getting close to a point of failure and actually achieving some metabolic stress in the peripheral, muscle system.
Yeah,
that sounds cool.
Josh, this is like Josh coaches me, and one of the things that he's said to me is getting all of my back squat, for instance, which is probably my least, it's my work, one of the hardest exercises for me is getting all, not just the speed, but getting all of the reps the same. So not this one is this speed and this one's this speed and every rep's different. It's keeping them the same. And this sounds like a really good way to, because it's one thing to be all right, I'm going to do that. But then once you have the weight on your back and stuff, it's it's a whole different. You
get to rep 8.
It's my brain is fighting against me. You know what I'm saying? It's it's trying to convince me that I'm doing it right, even because it's it doesn't want to. So I think this is a really good way of, it just sounds like it would make the coaching a lot more effective, at least, especially for people of like my demographic, which is like not athlete, you know?
Yeah, and so for the velocity metric, you would flip it. So for our power lifter or our running back, the goal is to lift the same weight faster to increase force and power output. For the bodybuilder, we actually want to maintain a constant velocity. Yeah. So can you do your set of 12, all of them between 0.7 and 0.75 meters per second?
Right.
So a constant concentric tentric, all with a 2-second eccentric. So within the metric app, feature doesn't exist yet, but it's coming soon, you might change your view to view concentric velocity plus eccentric duration. And so you'd focus on those two metrics. Yes. So all my eccentric durations have to be between 2 and 2.5 seconds, and my concentric velocity or concentric duration as well needs to be 0.7 meters per second. So I'm not rushing and trying to bounce up and using elastic energy. I'm actually using muscle contraction and getting a burn into those reps. And you can see as you go on, you might in a bodybuilding setting actually speed up your reps, which in normally in a set you would fatigue as you put in power and you exhaust your nervous system towards the end of the set. In bodybuilding, you might speed up because you're trying to rush through because you're getting through the pain. There, you actually want to do the opposite and slow down deliberately to stay within that range. So there's heaps of applications that haven't even been thought about by any of the existing technologies. I think it's a huge missed opportunity. So yeah, this is why velocity-based training is such a bad name, because bodybuilders are just like, I don't want to train velocity, I want to train with a burn. And it's like, yeah, but it's data that help you get that burn to achieve and track the volume of your training, not just the output of your training.
The amount of times as a coach, especially for bodybuilding and hypertrophy-based training protocols, where athlete sends a video and we're like, all right, I'm going to need you to slow that down by at least half a second. And it's hard when you have 300-400 pounds on your back to stay disciplined enough to actually count accurately your your eccentric load, your eccentric time, a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi versus 1, 2, 3. It's hard. So being able to go back, check that, actually get raw data that says it was only a 2.25 second eccentric and you didn't pause for a full second at the bottom. That like you said earlier, it doesn't seem like a big deal at the time, but if you're serious about what you do and you do not fix that to the point where it should be, you'll end up missing out over the course of 4, 6, 12 weeks. You're going to miss out on a ton of stimulus. So yeah, massive. So this is
you're literally tons of stimulus.
Yeah, like an actual ton of stimulus that can take your training to a whole new level. And also, you're going to end up, if you're not paying attention to this data, you're going to end up chasing reps, load, and other variables when you haven't actually perfected this one or paid enough attention to it. So like we were talking about earlier, all these variables, they all matter. And as people who are actively trying to get better at what we do, we just want data. So you're right. Velocity-based training, especially in a hypertrophy setting, might not be the best name, and it might not indicate how we're actually going to be intentionally using the technology, but it definitely has its place. Sounds really cool.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think what to sum up what we just talked about there with the bodybuilding, I think what this can do is it can close the gap between what's written on paper and what's done in the real world. So you write a program and you go, okay, we're doing legs. So it's squat 4x12, ham curl 3x15, this by that, do sets and reps and you at this sort of percentage of 1RM. If you can program, 3 sets of 45 seconds with a tempo count, and then you get the video of it, and it's like, well, I programmed this is your video. Can you see what the difference is? You see my problem I'm having with this? It makes it so much easier to coach to keep your athletes accountable. And athletes aren't always trying to cheat. Sometimes they are, but they aren't always trying to cheat. And so if you say 3x12 and they give you 12 and it's like, it was 12 seconds, half a second down, half a second up, they're flying through them versus, like we're talking about before, getting that constant velocity on the way up. If we can program with numbers that are objective measures of the stimulus we're chasing, because reps is really about trying to chase seconds. What we're really trying to chase time and attention through reps. And so we give more reps to get more time and attention. That's the thing our body's responding to. If you can just straight up program 45 seconds of work with a 2 up, 2 down, they just keep going until they hit that. And then the app maybe dings at them. Maybe their headphones have a little bell when you hit 45 seconds. All right,
that would be cool.
48. And you're done.
That would be cool.
Haptic feedback or feedback of some sort.
Yeah.
That would be huge.
And so we haven't done that yet, but I think there's a big place for that, particularly in less so in the power situations. In the power situations, just give me 3, give it everything, and we'll have a look at it afterwards. I think it's a distraction. But in bodybuilding, where you're trying to take your mind off the pain to focus, to get the reps out, to make the quality good. I think in those situations, just do reps at a tempo until you hear the bell. You don't have to worry about counting. You don't have to. Because you count your eccentric. You go 1, 2, 3 up. Wait, was that rep 3 or was it just a count of 3?
Yeah.
And then you lose your count.
I have this app Breathwork, which is for breathing.
Oh yeah.
And it has really good feedback where you have your headphones in and it has audio. It plays a sound for the in and the out, and it can vibrate and buzz, and the feedback that it has for your breath tempo. So it'll be breath for recovering in between. There's all kinds of different ones. There's before going to sleep, waking up, relaxing. There's before your workout sets, in between sets for recovery. There's different types of breath. So it'll show breathe in for this amount at this speed from your chest, and then breathe out from your stomach. All these different, they're all different breath strategies for different things, whether it's sleep, calming, waking up, recovery, mid-workout. And the feedback on it is really good because breath work to me is very similar but very different from bodybuilding workout, where it's just so boring to when you suck at it, it's just it's almost painful to make yourself do it, to where you're I don't really, you just make excuses. And then on the opposite side of that, bodybuilding, it's just so painful. And there's just so much time, you know what I'm saying? That it's really easy to start making excuses. But if you have a technology that helps guide you and give feedback, it's much easier to take your mind off of it and just follow this thing. Which I think is the appeal of having an in-person coach.
Yeah, thank you.
That's why people in-person coaches, because they you don't have to be the person telling yourself how to do it. This person is keep going, keep going, keep going. You know what I'm saying? But if you have an app that can help an online coach have that in-person feedback, that would be epic.
Yeah, that would be sick.
Thanks for the recommendation on Breathwork too. I'm going to download that, have a play, and then I'm just going to copy the haptic feedback ideas.
Yeah. Let's have it link up with a Spotify feature too. It can recommend songs that have the right.
You're starting
tempo.
to slow down, so Eye of the Tiger comes on.
Yeah. There's
there's running apps that do that.
Is it really?
The running apps that will notice your heart rate and your cadence, and then you'll have you'll set a fire up song, and if you fall below a certain pace or a certain cadence with your running, it'll kick in your Foo Fighters or your Metallica or whatever it is you want. Yeah.
That's cool. I've done that for I do a lot of tempo based training myself, especially lately, the past 6 months or so, and I'm always looking for a song that really hypes me up for a top set, but also has the right beat. I can count 1, 2, 3 on the way down. As long as I'm following the beat, there's a 3 down, there's a pause at the bottom, and then there's a 1 up. And I just try to stay with the beat, and it keeps me locked in. It keeps me honest. I know when I fall off, but like you said, as a bodybuilder, a lot of times if you're starting to fail, you end up bouncing a little bit out of the bottom. You end up speeding up the eccentric just a little bit, falling down rather than controlling yourself down into the hole. So yeah, a lot of really cool possibilities for the technology that you guys are putting together for all sorts of application. And I think, keeping us honest in bodybuilding as far as our tempo goes is one that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Although athletes might hate it because then all of a sudden they're actually doing 3-second eccentrics.
Yeah. Fuck that.
Fuck. Yeah. Coach, I couldn't get it to download. It wouldn't work on my phone. So I'm on Android. It's only on Apple.
I noticed this with pretty much almost all my movements. There's a couple movements where I know I'm not actually 3 seconds. A lot of my movements I'm probably closer to 4, but especially those really heavy hack squats, RDLs, something where I got 3 seconds eccentrics. That pause at the bottom might get a little bit short. I need something to check me, because otherwise, my bicep curls. Yeah, sure, 3-4 second eccentric, no big deal. But man, those heavy loads, they make it challenging. So having something to check you, and also something in my headphones would be so fucking helpful. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll add that to the list. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, right. That's my
stuff. Yeah.
It's my request, my personal request.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, the technology that you guys are putting together is really cool. And it sounds like a lot of application far outside just, what we remember on sports science when we were watching sports science on TV. This is for general population. So this is really exciting, man. I appreciate you coming on and sharing it with us and telling us about it and talking about like nerding out on fitness and data applications. We're all just data nerds, and I didn't know I was a nerd until I found fitness. So it's always cool to connect with other people who share that same passion. But man, I know a lot of people are going to want to learn about where they can actually sign up. I know you said that it's in beta right now. So before we take off, I'd love to give you the opportunity to just kind of plug yourself, tell us where and how we can gain access to the app and, some things that you have coming in the future.
Yeah, cool. So the app, it's March 1 today here in Australia. We are in beta right now. It's a pretty open beta. So if you contact me on Instagram or Twitter, it's at VBT Coach, all one word. If you contact me there with a DM, give me a follow, just say, hey, Jacob, can I get the beta? I'll hit you up. There's no dramas with that, so whatever. The other option, though, is we're about to launch, hopefully in the next few weeks, to actually go live. So the other option is if you go to metric.coach, metric.coach, COACH, that's our website. That'll have all the latest details on where we're at with the launch. So if you go to that website and we've launched, there'll be a big button saying download on Apple. The first version will only be on Apple. We haven't built for Android yet. Sorry to our Android friends out there. It is coming. Not yet, but it'll be down the track. But if you head to that website, that'll have the latest details. So it'll either have a download now or we are in beta, join the waitlist kind of situation. And then, Metric is on social media as well. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube with more VBT content. So explaining how to use the technology, kind of education side of things and practical applications. And then Metric is brand-based stuff. So how the app's coming along, features, all that sort of stuff. And that's Metric VBT. I believe all one word. Again, Instagram and Twitter is our main channels. We're not on TikTok yet. I'm 30. I think I'm a bit old to start TikTok, but maybe talk to me in 6 months. That might have changed.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, I thought the same thing. And I think that this type of stuff would do really well on TikTok. It would crush on TikTok, and you can grow a following so fast.
You don't have to dance.
Okay.
If you don't
you don't have to dance.
Thank goodness.
No, you don't have to dance. You don't have to point, but I think, really quick sound bites of education around VBT and its different applications, I think would do well. So don't rule it out yet, man. I
don't like that you've said that. I've just gotten on Twitter. So I've been on Instagram for ages, really comfortable on that, comfortable on YouTube. I've got subscribers and making content on both those channels. Just got onto Twitter and just sort of getting used to it. And I was like, no,
Twitter's hard.
I'll never do TikTok. And now you guys have both just said, get on TikTok.
I've
got enough apps on my home screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, your YouTube.
No one
killing it.
12 months ago, I realized that no one was really doing dedicated content in this space. So I was like, let's actually dive deep, get in a rabbit hole and own it, but make it practical. I think a lot of the times this stuff's all too theoretical and kind of abstract. It's like, oh, these are the zones and this is what we do this is what we found in the study. It's like no one's actually saying this is what you should do if you're a bodybuilder. This is what you should do if you're a powerlifter. So I'm trying to change that and make it actually, here's the interesting theory, but also this is why it matters and this is how you would then apply that in a peaking phase, in a hypertrophy block, whatever it might be, I think.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think, like knowledge without application, useless. So give people knowledge, but teach them how to apply it, make it practical. I think that's cool. So that being said, tell people, what's your YouTube? Let's send people over there.
It's also VBT Coach, I think. So
okay, all right. I didn't know.
I'm pretty sure I've got a few videos on the search bar of velocity-based training. So if you just search for velocity-based training, you'll see my face. I've got like a bluey, greeny kind of logo thing going on. I've done a bunch of sort of intro to VBT stuff. I'm about to do some more specific ones. I've got a strength one lined up. After this, I'm just going to take that snippet, I think when we talked about hypertrophy, and turn that into a bodybuilding video, sort of shortish lecture type stuff and some practical stuff in there as well. But always with an emphasis on what you can actually use in the gym tomorrow during your workout. Watch my video, download the app, you use it the next day is kind of really the focus. Make it easy. Not overcomplicate things, not too many fancy metrics and fancy regression models and all that kind of stuff. That's all fun, but not very helpful if you just want to get started with this stuff.
I love it, man. So yeah, we're going to pop your show notes in, all your links in the show notes. So everybody who's listening, check out the show notes. We're going to pop the links down there. You'll be able to follow Jacob and get access to the Metric app. But man, thank you again for coming on. It's been a pleasure to nerd out with you and talk about this new piece of just technology that's going to be helping us in our health and fitness endeavors. So I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody who's tuned in and stayed with us for this episode of the Struggle of Strength podcast. We will see y'all next week.